Hi, this is me hitting the recording button. Welcome to this, our first official true installment of Egan and ChatGPT Walk Into a Bar. This is exciting. We'll be doing some grammar stuff. Think right now about what topics there's one topic, one question, one subject, one whatever that you have found really boring, dull, hard, whatever, meaningless when you were thinking about grammar or learning grammar or trying to teach somebody grammar. Throw those into the chat right now because we'll pick one of those. And then in the next 40 minutes, we will get to the bottom of it. We're going to find out how awesome it is, but also kind of make some kind of lesson plan from this live using only ChatGPT plus the powers of Kieran Egan. His toolkits and whatnot. Oh, I forgot something. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. It's been hustle, hustle, hustle all day long. Not a bad day. But I thought that to actually celebrate this installment, first ever of Egan and ChatGPT Walk Into a Bar, we should actually have a drink with this. Cheers to what we're about to do. Hello, Val. Okay, so we now have 2 more minutes. Go ahead and throw a bunch of really boring topics about grammar into this. What we did last time, we recorded it. It's not publicly available for reasons, but by the end of that, what we came up with was it ended up being kind of like a week-long plan for how to do long division, how to teach. Oh, wow. Sorry. I usually like this beer a lot. How to do long division in a very Eganized way to get at the core of why the long division algorithm has meaning, and how to introduce it to really gin up the sense of meaning and the emotions as part of all of that. And it's so cool. I want to do something similar with some kind of grammar thing. So you can think of here, what the heck? To start this off, let's actually ask ChatGPT just to give us some more ideas for this. I'm going to change the resolution of my monitor right now just to make that easier in a second. Okay. And now I will share camera plus screen. Boo. Here we go. Yes, good. Can I jump to the other side? I don't think that I can. Okay, so I will just be typing in some things right here. List topics in grammar that people find boring. Oh, but you couldn't quite see that I typed that in, could you? See, this is one of those things that it would be, it has to be all the way up to here until you can see that. What I can do right now is actually go and drag myself to this side. And now you'll be able to see that better. Great. Okay. See, little improvements as we go about doing this. Ooh. Oh, thank you, Val. Commas were hard if kids didn't read their work aloud. Okay, so we can actually take commas as commas are weirdly the most complex punctuation mark to do, but if we want to do commas, we can approach that from a high level. Obviously, they're the most useful one to do. And we can try for that. I like that. Okay, so here's some other things that ChatGPT is suggesting for this: parts of speech, subject, verb, agreement. That's a fun one. Tenses, especially the past perfect and future perfect. So that's, I had punched the zebra. I will have punched the zebra, when to use situations like that. What's the most complicated one? I will have been punching the zebra would be how it would work for this. Diagramming. Yeah, diagramming is, I admit that I love diagramming, and one of my first engagements as an educator online in an online fight was actually around the value of diagramming sentences against a linguist, a homeschooler who's a linguist, who said, no, it's garbage. I'm like, oh, No, it's not, and you don't know how terrible people are at this. Granted that there are better things that you could do. Granted that like true linguists, modern linguists, like they don't diagram sentences in the old, I forget the name of it, the old circa 1905 version of doing it. But most kids have no idea what a subject is to save their life, and they can't do so many things, independent clauses, dependent clauses, because they don't understand the utter basics. And sentence diagramming in English was designed to do a really good job of that. If anyone is interested in really a book that will, I don't know if it'll make you fall in love with sentence diagramming, but Sister Bernadette's Barking Dog is what I always recommend for this. Let's click on here. The Quirky History and Lost Art of Diagramming Sentences. It is not exactly a how-to manual. You will learn some how-to, but it talks about the story behind it, and it talks about, I mean, it shows you like some absurdly long, like, Proustian sentences that get diagrammed from that. Yeah, diagramming can be so much fun from this. Okay, so can I take commas? Is that okay if I just take commas from this? Because I think, honestly, it's going to be the hardest of all of these things. Go ahead and, wow, you're actually already over the 5 minutes for this. So go ahead and someone say yes, and then we will take that as our rationale for being able to do that. Great. Thank you very much, Anne. All right. Thank you very much, Miss Kisa. All right. Okay. So then what's going to happen is I have now, oh, sorry. I was saying this before I get distracted. Ordinarily, we do this for a full hour. My wife and I are in the market for a house right now, and we just found a house that just came onto the market that abuts, I love being able to use that word, abuts a forest, which is like one of the things that we want most in this world. So at 9 p.m. Central Time, we are going to go with our realtor and check out this house. So I'm going to have to end this early to make sure that I don't get there. Actually, it's 8:45, so before this ends. So I'm going to have to make this end a little bit early at 45 minutes after the hour, so I could rush over there. The Transitive Vampire is being recommended. Val, can you change the way you're chatting, not to hosts and panelists, but to all people? I have not found a way of getting Zoom to not even offer this as an option, but then everyone will see what you're saying. The Transitive Vampire by Karen Gordon is also fun for grammar. I do not know about that. Shoot me an email if you're interested, Brandon@eganeducation.com with that title, and I'll be sure to actually take a look at that. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I am now going to try to figure out how can we teach commas to kids in a way that is emotionally compelling, packed with meaning, personal, otherwise, maybe personal, and like analytically rigorous, intellectually, content-wise apt for this. Only using Egan's tools and ChatGPT. Okay, so the one thing that I will be doing with this, well, the two things. I said only using, well, yeah, those two. So here's a list of tools, Egan's tools. Alessandro and I put this together. This is a novel version of this. Usually I use a simpler version, but I thought I'd pull out all the stops and show you all of these sorts of things right now. Okay, so right now I'm just going to start by thinking about how I think about commas. I think about commas as, of course, making pauses, obviously, duh. In writing is going to be, writing is always interesting, right? Because writing is about how do you take the things that are inside of your mouth and put them on paper. When you put something from your mouth on paper, you are losing so much. So I'm interested in the history of how did we come up with commas in the first place, right? What is these, in other words, what is the story, the simple story that goes on to that, or I don't know, even the complex story of where the heck that comes from. I'm interested in seeing how are commas strange or heroic. How can we see the comma as a hero in a story, or perhaps the people who invented commas as a hero in this story? I'm interested thus in some of the gossip around commas and the people who made them. I am interested in the binary opposites, the emotional binaries of commas. I'm guessing right now that that's going to be clarity versus unclarity. So Egan actually has a book, I should say that, Kieran Egan Literacy. his book, Teaching Literacy, Engaging the Imagination of New Readers and Writers, is a good book. It's arguably his best book because it's his most specific book, where he talks about a whole bunch of ideas here. And one of the things he talks about is when teaching punctuation, like you teach the history of where these things comes from. I purchased this approximately a dozen years ago. I still read it sometimes now. Recommended. Yes, good. This. Anything else that I'm going to be looking for? I'm going to be interested in. I'm going to be interested also maybe in what's lost with commas. Is there something that is lost with it? I'm going to. I mean, obviously, like the modern age is marked. This is especially true in the 1800s when people start to write down these books about like this is the one way to use punctuation, right? And you get these people who just, like they're too punctilious. In fact, we even have this word punctilious in English, right? That means to be too obsessed with details. What's interesting is the punct in punctilious is the same as the punct in punctuation, from to puncture to stab, or to have small little dots, right? Like we're dotting every I and crossing every T, that sort of thing. So I feel like people get hung up on these finicky definitions, and there's a role for them. But I'm wondering, like, what gets lost in that? Almost like the quantification of everything, like the rulization of everything in the modern period, which you get in the 1800s with these grammar manuals. And then I'm interested, like, what do these rules miss with this? So I'm going to try to like talk about the story of commas as like coming from like an attempt to put into writing what we always put in our speech, if that makes sense. I'm suddenly aware that this is like weirdly meta because Egan's whole theory of development, so to speak, this whole kinds of understanding is about like this idea that every individual kid undergoes the adventure of like the human race, which always sounds kind of dumb, but my goodness, I think it's literally true. It takes a long time to unpack it, which is what I was doing in my book review. But like I think it's true. But that evolution involves in part the move between mythic, which is like you think of like the great old cultures, but they came up with their stories, they came up with their ethoses when they didn't have writing. When they just did everything through speech, and Egan said, like, there's like a certain way of living your life when all you have is speech, of dealing with the information of the world and feeling the emotional chargedness of so many of these things. And the story of commas is about how to take the feelings that we have in spoken language and put them into writing. In fact, writing when we almost become too punctilious. We become too rule-bound. We become too enamored of these abstractions. Like, well, there's this rule that involves when you have a dependent clause in front of an independent clause. But you don't have to follow it when you have an independent clause and then a dependent clause that comes after it or something like that. It's not exactly right. My terms here are a bit loose. I'm thinking prepositional phrases. If a prepositional phrase comes before an independent clause, then you usually put a comma, but not if it comes at the end. And there's a reason for that, I think. Okay, anything else here? Note that between the two of these things is the romantic in Egan's sense. This is in some ways the hardest thing about Egan, and it's the thing I think is maybe the least like objectively true about Egan. And yet when it is true, it is like the deepest, most amazing pedagogical truth. That between this and this, like the mythic and the philosophic, like the old way of being human and like the modern way of being human, there's this awesome overlap. I'm interested to see how that comes into what we were talking about. Essays, lists, and collections, bizarre details. Okay, great. That was me kind of talking about this. Oh, at the end of this, I want you to vote. I want you to actually vote as to like whether we have done, to what extent we have done this. Eventually, we should come up with some actual things that we should know that we are voting for. But this is still, this is still a work in progress, isn't it? Okay, so what do I want to start with? I think I actually want to start with the history of where the heck the commas come from, because honestly, like that's going to carry some of the meaning that the emotional meaning that we have for all of this, that is going to then get kids excited to want to learn the rules for this. So, camera screen, okay. Act as a historian. Oh, I figured this out last time. Act as a historian of punctuation, and as briefly as possible, please tell me the history of commas. As you tell me the story, please pattern it off of a definite emotional binary. In the ancient world, writing was a marathon, words flowing without pause, breathless, relentless. People struggled, lost in a sea of letters. Then, in the 3rd century BCE, along came Aristophanes of Byzantium, a librarian. Oh, I remember this guy! His mind, sharp and disciplined, yearned for order. He created marks, short pauses for breaths. The comma was born, relief. Writers and readers finally had a way to breathe. But centuries passed, and commas became a battlefield. Renaissance writers abused them, scattering commas like confetti. Chaos. Writers argued when to pause, how often. In the 18th century, grammarians tightened the rules. Precision returned. Now commas sit between clarity and confusion. You can see the binary here, between balance and excess. They either save or ruin. Okay, how well do you feel like you understand this? Anyone want to ask any questions that I can actually ask it? I hit the wrong. Wow, what's going on right now? How do I stop this? Pause. Stop. Go back. Oh, if I hit that one, it goes and it will respond back to me verbally. I like having this sort of thing. I meant to click this. Sorry about that. Give me some specific examples of when commas can be taken too far in the way that you're talking about. Unnecessary pauses. Original. The dog barked loudly, waking the neighbors. What? No one would say that. This is false. Better. The dog barked loudly, waking the neighbors. Too many pauses into the natural rhythm. But this is purposeless. There's no reason to do that. Overused in lists. Original. He bought apples, oranges, bananas, strawberries, and grapes. Better. He brought. It just stops the. Separating essential. I don't like this. This is bad. This is garbage. Separating essential clauses. Original. The man who lives next door is a doctor. Better. The man who lives next door is a doctor. The commas make the clause seem non-essential. Okay. So it's getting into some stuff that I feel like I don't kind of understand. Okay. It's going to go through more examples of this and I don't care. I want to understand. I'm going to up this from GPT 4.0 to 0.1, which is more advanced. I'll do the fast one, and I don't want it to be long. What I want to do right now, I'm realizing, even before I go too deep into the story, and I do want to get more into the story, I want to understand what the essential rule for when to use commas is. Possibly you know, right, with oh, no, Aristophanes is real. Very clear. I check on Aristophanes. Totally real. Wait. But is it the Aristophanes we all know and love in Athens, or is it another Aristophanes? Okay, sorry. I have a memory of this. I also feel like I've read that the history of commas, that the Greeks invented this comma-like system where they had dots, but they were all dots, and a dot high in the line versus the middle of the line versus low in the line. Those meant different things. Like a high one maybe was the longest pause. Like that was like our periods. And this one, the bottom was like a comma, and this one was kind of like a semicolon. But then that died out, and we had to reinvent it again. So I wonder if that's actually combining those things together. But sorry, what I want to do right now is understand the total logic of this. One of the big cuts against Egan education from people who don't really understand it, including people who are really excited about it and have read like my book review and like maybe like seen a lecture by here at Egan, but they don't feel like they feel like they understand, but they don't. Is they think like, oh, just add stories, make it cool. No. You can do that, and sometimes it's really good. But what Eganizing the world is, Eganization is about, is identifying what is most wonderful in a thing, what is most profound, what is most important in a thing, and then using these tools and these stories and whatever to get that thing out. I feel like I could just say like, what is most important in a comma? It's about how to like take our speech and bring it out into the world. Now I'm wondering, should I instead focus on like, what is the essential rule? Well, I'll try that. I'll see what I want. Maybe I should go with one of those and not both of them. Act as an inventive grammarian who nevertheless adheres strictly to the deep laws of punctuation. Please tell me, as briefly as humanly possible, how all of the rules for when to use commas might be simplified into one sentence. Think of commas as sentence traffic lights, regulating pauses in lists, clauses, and phrases to ensure clear and smooth communication. I don't like that. I mean, it's okay. It's a metaphor that it's using for this. That's fine, right? Note how, like, when ChatGPT is working well in some ways, it actually uses Egan's tools like metaphors naturally, because that's what good writing is. That doesn't, however, tell me when I should use a comma. Please fill in the end of this sentence. You should use a comma whenever. I'm amazed that I picked up from the ... the diaresis at the end of them. Whenever you separate items in a list, introduce a clause or phrase, enclose non-essential information, or join independent clauses. But that last part isn't even true. When you join independent clauses, right? The duck ate the bread, the duck got sick, the duck barfed. Okay. Each of those is an independent clause. The duck ate the bread, comma, the duck got sick, comma, the duck barfed, period. No, wrong. You need a periods separating those or semicolons separating those. This seems to be an interesting limit of ChatGPT. I wonder if it over updated on the inventiveness of this or the brevity of this. I'm not happy with this right now. This is also, I think, hurt by the fact that I have taught a class on punctuation before. I have a whole curriculum on punctuation. So, like, I know too much is maybe getting in my way here. So there's something here. Yeah, the Greek Aristophanes, the Greek playwright, right? The guy who wrote The Clouds. That's him, right? Yeah, I don't think that he does invent this. Wow, so this is ChatGPT. You are having a bad night. Let me go back to the story aspect of this. Imagine a world without commas. How would life be harder for us? What would be lost? More challenging? You're giving examples of this, but you're not the classic let's eat grammar. Literally, whenever I invite my kids to dinner, let's eat, I always in my head finish grandma because of that. Quite the earworm. Do you know the book Eats, Shoots, and Leaves? Lynn Truss. There is, I'm sorry, I can actually show this. There's a kid's version that's not really a kid's version. It's something different, but it's not better. It's just awesomer. Eats, Shoots, Leaves, Kids. Oh, wow. Someone has read it and put it on YouTube. That's great. It's a whole bunch of example sentences where it is different if you put a comma in. Usually it's a comma or don't put it in. Really? You upload this, but you don't upload it so we can see the... That's terrible. Such a... Ugh. Slow children crossing. Slow children crossing. There we go. It's a pretty good example of that, right? So all the children are slow. Okay, I'm wondering if we need to pull out the big guns for this. I'm thinking of the Egan tool of absurdity. I'm interested... This comes from my dissatisfaction with the way... Oops, wrong button. This comes from my dissatisfaction of the way that ChatGPT just gave me... Well, this one, right? This is great. This one is great. These ones, who cares? This is dumb. I want nonsense. nonsense will stick in the brain. So what I want to do, I could ask it to come up with sentences whose meaning radically differs based on whether there's a comma or not. This is not, I'm not happy with how this is going so far. I feel like we're going to fail this one. Sorry. Hark, an idea. Let me try this first, and then I can extend it into that. Let's come up with some absurd sentences where the removal or the addition of commas totally changes the meaning of the sentence from something to something it totally is not. As a homeschooling father, what I would do with my kids in this situation is make these about a favorite animal of theirs. So would somebody be willing to throw out an animal that they like? Horses it is. Okay, thank you very much, Anne. All right. I like that that's why that didn't come up last time, that problem. I really like that last one. What I'd like you to do is give me a bunch of sentences that are all about horses that come in two versions, one with the commas and one with the commas removed. I want you to only choose sentences in which removing the commas makes the sentence have a totally different meaning, especially if the meaning is absurd. Big money. Handing over the reins, but up. They put some work into making those funny. Okay. Oh, that's pretty good. Let's ride, horses. Let's ride horses. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Now, it even gives the sort of the rule for this. So I'm just thinking of like how we could use this if we were trying to teach a kid, like these are comma rules, right? You could like give a bunch of, you could give this example and say, what is the difference here? And then you could, here, I'm sorry. I'm going to even just, I'm going to skip the rest of these for a second. I really like that first one with the direct address versus a statement. Can you please give me very different versions of commas making a difference between direct addresses and statements, also using horses, but make them as different as possible as the sentences that you've already given? I don't know if that was clear. We'll see. One of the things I love about ChatGPT is if like you think that something wasn't clear, you can put it to ChatGPT and see if it thought it was clear. And it's not objective, but it's more objective than one person. That was not as funny. Not as funny. Let's eat horse. Let's eat horse. Help me, horse. Help me, horse. The speaker is requesting help for their horse. No, they're not. No, they're not. So as the educator, you would have to edit this one out. Expressing disapproval. No horse. Ooh, no horse. That's good. I like that. Are these different? Wait, hold on. Are all of these the new thing? Wow. Hold on for a second. These seem very different, and I'm wondering, are these still truly inside of direct address versus statement? Or are these other things? Horses are wonderful animals. Nope, wrong. That's a false thing. Next time I do this, remind me to say, double check that your sentences are actually grammatically correct sentences. Horses are wonderful animals. Okay, ignore that. Addressing multiple entities versus misinterpretation. Come here, horses. Come here, horses. What? Could be misinterpreted as come here, humans, horses? Maybe I'm just misinterpreting that. Distinguishing ownership versus absurd ownership. The rider, a skilled equestrian, mounted the horse. The rider, a skilled equestrian, mounted the horse. Now it's trying for something. This is bad at this. You know, I've never done grammar with ChatGPT before. It's so good at getting grammar right. It's not designed to use language, right? For something that's not designed to use language, it's really good at grammar. Also rhyming, pretty good. The horse that's flowing mane. Okay, so these are, anyway, I bring this up to say that these are in truth very different. So now I go to the spot where I asked, in fact, this last thing. Invitation to eat, request for assistance. I guess these are kind of all the same thing. Expressing disapproval, giving order to move. Move, horse. Move, horse. This is weird, although you can imagine some context in which it would be the case. Expressing gratitude with comma, thank you, horse. Thank you, horse. Every time I do this, I want to like turn this into a noun phrase. Oh, which horse do you... Oh, you want the thank you horse. Oh, yeah, she's over there. But it doesn't work particularly well. Run, horse, run! Run, horse, run. Now, it's just saying what's better or worse. It's not absurd. Watch out, horse. Watch out, horse. Nope, fail. Wow, horse. Wow, horse. Stay, lightning. Oh, that's interesting. Stay, lightning. Don't stop being the horse that I know love lightning. Enough, horse. Enough, horse. We have enough horse around here. It's pretty good. Okay, so far what we've seen is that we can, for some of these rules, we can get ChatGPT to sometimes give us sentences that take away the commas and thus become absurd. Can I suggest that this would not be a terrible way of running part of a homeschooling curriculum when you're trying to get ChatGPT, when you're trying to teach a kid how to use commas. So what I'm specifically suggesting is that you could take a day and focus just on what is the general category of this? Direct addresses versus statements. And you could say, here's an example of these two things. What's the difference here? Here's an example of these two things. What is really going on here? How are these two examples like one another? Note that what the move that we're making right now is not Eganian. It is constructivist, and this is great. Constructivism is really wonderful when we're talking about sort of analytically things like this, and when we're talking about grammar, we definitely are. So you could have them take, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 sentences from ChatGPT, possibly ones that you had vouched for first to make sure they weren't terrible. And you could ask your kid to connect them and say, like, what is the general sort of situation that is going on here? So those you could do for every single comma rule. And boy, there's like, I mean, depending on how you count, there's like a dozen central comma situations where you use a comma. You could do that for them. And that would be great. It would be engaging. Because it's ChatGPT, your kid could go, yeah, but like that, like, doesn't really make sense to me. And you'd be like, yeah, I guess not, right? Like, it's not things that you yourself have made. It's not things from a book that has like been checked by somebody who's like totally authoritative on a thing. It's in some ways nice when you use something that's as crappy as ChatGPT because it is, you can open it up for criticism in a way that is easier to do, makes more sense to do. Question, what are the benefits of learning the rules for commas versus learning how to use them instinctively? Fantastic question. If you are my wife, instinct is all you will ever need, right? There really are some people who, like, they just read a lot and they just pick up naturally on how to do this. There are other people who, I mean, some of them actually don't read at all and they need to know how to write still. We can say that the bigger thing to do is to get them to read more, and I don't disagree with you there. But there are also people who read a lot, and like, boy, they just suck at that. My kids are so bad at spelling, so bad. My wife and I, we never struggled with spelling at all. I can tell you how to spell a lot of really weird words better than I can tell you the names of friends of mine. Right? There's something going on in there. So I'd say that instinctively is better because usually in most situations, because it doesn't, you can spend your time doing better things than learning punctuation rules. But learning the rules is something that when we can find a way of expressing these rules to people really clearly and in a way that engages them and in a way that actually then helps them like feel themselves to becoming deeper members of the human race, like then we should do that too, or we should do that instead. If it was just a bunch of rules, if we just were using ChatGPT though to come up with a bunch of examples for this, it would be good. It would be kind of Egan-y in the sense that we're using some nonsense there, but it's not particularly Egan-y. I feel like the way that I want to make this more Egan-y, not for the sake of making it more Egan, just not for the sake of itself, right? That's stupid. I do not worship this philosophy. I see this philosophy as the greatest tool that we have for making all educational things wonderful and meaningful and helping people become fuller human beings. So how do we do this? I mean, in some ways, I want to eventually, in doing this, and we won't have time for this today, we will want to find anomalies to grammar rules. Sorry, do you know of any anomalies for comma rules? There's a famous one that comes in the beginning of Lynn Truss's book for adults, Eats, Shoots, and Leaves, where she dedicates it to, here, cite a famous, I'll type this in, example, famous sentence where a punctilious, sorry, oh, you can see it here, where punctilious adherence to the rules of prescriptivist comma usage leads to absurdity. I always misspell the word adherence. Nope. Usage. It's one of those words I can never get. I'm wondering if you'll come up with some of the examples that I'm thinking of. No. No. No, because the prescriptivists, those are the people who are like, you must always obey the rules. The rules are handed down from on high. It is wonderful. Would say you should do this. Okay, so it's really not understanding this. Okay. I'm thinking of a sentence that has to do with Ayn Rand and God. It's fun to say out of context or inside of context. Wait, that other sentence, they're requesting help for their horse in a stereotypical Irish accent? Oh, is that what I was missing there? Okay. I'm remembering it now, though, so this is helpful for this. I want to dedicate this book to my parents, comma, Ayn Rand, comma, and God. I'm just even wondering, should I just try to make this a new... I want to get rid of this. I want to get rid of this. Here, take a look at this. This book is dedicated to my parents, comma, Ayn Rand, comma, and God. Okay, so do you know what the Oxford comma is? It's the question of if you have a list that goes X, Y, and Z, should you have that comma right here? The Oxford comma is this comma. I can't underline it or you can't see the underline right there. This comma right here is the Oxford comma. In America, we typically put a comma there. In England, they typically don't, except for Oxford University Press, which says that you should put a comma there. So any book with Oxford University Press is called that. So in England, it's called the Oxford comma, and that's why it's called that way. The other way, not it, is X, Y, and Z. And so you get, if you follow the Oxford comma, if you don't have the Oxford comma, then you take this out. However, in this circumstance, you get a very interesting sentence. This book is dedicated to my parents, comma, Ayn Rand and God. It almost seems as if the writer is trying to say that her parents her mother is Ayn Rand and her father is God, and Ayn Rand and God had a baby. This is funny because Ayn Rand was a noted atheistic philosopher who would have found this possibly insulting or hilarious. Not going to get into that. So this is an example of when we could be taking rules too far. So you think, oh, well, usually this idea comes up when people are arguing in favor of having the Oxford comma. They say, well, if you don't have the Oxford comma, then that will happen. However, it's been pointed out, and I've never actually seen any of these, that there are situations where if you don't have that, if you use the Oxford comma, then you end up in ridiculous situations. I'm going to leave in a couple minutes, so I'm not going to. We're going to end this couple minutes, so I'm not going to actually put that in there. I'm not going to actually look this up right now, but if we have more time, we could look that up. So one of the ideas for how to Eganize all of this is that at the end of this, after you learn the rules, or maybe even while you're learning the rules, what you should do is try to push beyond the rules. Understand that the rules miss things. This is actually a big aspect of eganism, right? That like the rules that we say are the rules, the laws that we say are the rules, like they are typically these things that these simplifications that we try to push into the world with our, dumb ape minds. And we should be careful about them. This is what he means from the move from philosophic to irony. We might say from modernism to postmodernism. The other thing, yeah, okay, this is good. Okay, so the I feel like we just said two things. We started at the beginning sniffing around maybe the first thing, which is how to plunk ourselves into a story of this. So, and I'm just going to cheat now. Egan, in this book, Teaching Literacy, gives this example, and he takes it from an Encyclopedia Brown book. I'm going to ask this. I'm just going to say it because of the interest of time. There's a great example from an Encyclopedia Brown book by Donald Sobel about how the meaning of a whole paragraph can be very different if there isn't any commas, when the commas are taken out. Can you find that paragraph? It's been reprinted many times. I don't know if it'll be true or not, but then I can always Google it. It's not it at all. It's not it at all. Bother. Sometimes Encyclopedia Brown, comma, no commas. Wow. Love letter. This. Tyrone. Yes. Sorry. I'm on TV tropes. Tyrone, commas, love letter. Oh, come now. So, I'm just add on Encyclopedia Brown. What I might suggest, Encyclopedia Brown, would be to open up. Yeah. I think I found it. But I'm clicking on Tumblr, so I'm always going to be careful here. Yes. I'd like to praise your beauty forever. What we're trying to find is some way, instead of just telling kids, this is the story of commas, it's Aristophanes, it's somebody, it's this sort of thing, right? Then, yes, no. So close. Instead of just telling them the historical story, you want to actually, got it! Yes! You want to make them feel like they themselves are a part of it, that they can experience the horrors of the world before there were any commas. So we give this story. Can I zoom in here? I hate ads. Kind of no. This is the letter that a boy named Tyrone wanted to write. How I long for a girl who understands what true romance is all about. You are sweet and faithful. Girls who are unlike you kiss the first boy who comes along and adore a belle. I'd like to praise your beauty forever. I can't stop thinking you are the prettiest girl alive. Thine, Tyrone. The trouble is that young Tyrone had not learned any punctuation, and so he wrote all of it down, but put the punctuation in the wrong place. And so what he got is, how I long for a girl who understands what true romance is. All about you are sweet and faithful girls who are unlike you. Kiss the first boy who comes along, adore a belle. I'd like to praise your beauty forever. I can't. Stop thinking you are the prettiest girl alive. Thine, Tyrone. Start with that. Then do the actual history of commas. When I did this, I actually ended up getting like a special order on a book called Pause and Effect that was an academic book about the medieval history of punctuation and spending hours scouring the appendices for like the real skinny on this. And I remember finding that there is some evidence that that commas were invented no, that was periods. Periods, you can make the case that they were invented by Christians, the early Christian church, who had to read out loud the Tanakh, the Old Testaments, and the epistles, the letters of the apostles. But just like we saw in that example, if you pause at the wrong spot, you totally changed the meaning of a sentence. So Christians, this story in part goes, but in significant part, because they actually feared that, like, wait, if you pause at the wrong spot in a chapter, like, you make Jesus God or you make Jesus not God. They thought, oh man, like, people could literally go to hell if the reader in front of this service, like, doesn't, if he pauses the wrong spot. Oh no, how can we stop this from happening? So that periods were invented by Christians to stop people from going to hell. Or is that commas? No, I'm totally confused. One of them was the Roman Empire. And then semicolons. Oh, semicolons. At some point we should do it on semicolons. Okay, so here's my suggestion for this. The first part of the lesson. Sorry, the first part of like a week or two. If you really wanted a kid to learn this. And get ready to give me from 0 to 10 how good a lesson this would be compared to how you had yourself when you were in school. If you can remember that, or some experience that you have with learning punctuation in school. First part, that letter to Tyrone. Maybe we make it better. Maybe we specify it for the kids, people that the kids know or something like that. Make it like really punchy and wonderful and absurd. So you can see the problems that miscommunication can have. We're grabbing some emotional binaries here. And we're putting it into a sort of a role-playing thing. Then tell some of the stories of historically, like, how we have learned to do these things. What was the world like before any punctuation? Who invented these things? What were they trying to do with it? Were they trying to save souls? Were they trying to save Rome? Were they trying to bring back the ancient times to get us out of the Middle Ages? That's a part of where semicolons come from. And then actually go into these comma rules and do it through examples. This is kind of constructivist, but okay, of based on the kid's favorite animal. It doesn't need to be an animal. It could be anything. You can have ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT do, right? Where we say like, okay, like here's it with it and here's it without. Okay, it's like what is adding the commas change? What, and then have the kid come up with a clever name for what is the what connects all of this group, this group, this group, this group. You could get even more constructivist on it and like have some like once the kid like has like 2 or 3 groups of these things, give them new ones like, oh, like which does this fall into? Of course, like you'd also want to be giving them ones like where there shouldn't be one. And then at the end of this, after you do all of these things, and really like the world's perfect punctuation curriculum would have to include more than this, but I'm late as it is. You'd need to find examples to go beyond these rules and show them how actually a slavish devotion to these rules can lead itself to disaster. Okay, and now I ask for everyone who is here, give us between 0 and 10, how does this compare to your own experience of this? If someone would actually, to do this. 5 means exactly par, 10 means wow, 0 means wow, but not the good kind of wow. Go for it. My wife and daughter and I were talking about red pandas this morning. And which makes me think of Michael D.C. Drought. Michael D.C. Drought is, I don't know, one of my favorite academics. He is the founder of the Journal of Tolkien Studies, or one of the founders of it. He does Anglo-Saxon literature at Wheaton College in Massachusetts. He has, the thing that's so amazing about him is that if you go to Amazon, you'll see he has all of these courses. I listened to all of them when I got out of college. These, book on tape, book on CD sort of courses. You can get them on Audible now, almost all of them. These aren't. I want the modern. Yeah, this is. He does these with Modern Scholar. Let me even just look up modern. Let me take it off of books, and let me look up Modern Scholar. Exploring fantasy literature, Way with Words, Writing, Rhetoric, and the Art of Persuasion, The Modern Scholar. I don't know this one. Singers and Tales, Oral Tradition, The Roots of Literature. What? Oh, I've got to do this one. This is the one, and it's for free, at least for me. The Modern Scholar, Way with Words, Part 3, Grammar for Adults. And he has his red panda method. There's a whole metaphor that's going on here. It's pretty funny. But it's supposed to be this way that is between the prescriptivists who say these are the rules that are handed down from on high. Learn them, gosh darn it. And the descriptivists who are like, language is just this messy human thing. You should learn these things if you want, but you shouldn't do them yourself, only if you want to, I guess. He's like, no, there really is like, both of these are describing part of the elephant. You should understand the rules, but you should understand how the rules came about in this messy human way. And you should understand how these rules evolve and are evolving and can be broken to become better in some situations. But you should know what these sentences are, these situations are, so you can be wonderful with words. You can have a way with words. I highly recommend this. This, in some ways, is the most deeply Egan of all of the grammar things that I have ever read. Or whatever. Okay. Yeah, great, but I'd expand. I would expand also. 8 and an 8 and a 7. Yeah, I feel like ChatGPT didn't pull its weight today. Kind of sad. ChatGPT. Everyone, thank you tremendously for coming to this. We will do this again next. We might do one in the middle. But on October 5th in the afternoon. I should say that if you were interested in this, you would be very interested, potentially, in the learning in depth thing, where we are doing this, and we are starting with the year-long project where we start with ChatGPT and we use it to undergird everything else, but then we add on the best books, and we add on the best, how to find the best YouTube videos, and how to get into academic literature, how to use interlibrary loan, and we give you one ridiculously boring topic, like commas. And we help you go so deep into it that you realize that nothing in the world is boring. Everything contains wonder. This was Kieran Egan's brainchild. It's so exciting and wonderful, and I recommend it highly, especially if you like this sort of thing. Thanks for coming to this. Bye.